Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be providing you with an argument as to why Italy did not betray the Central Powers in the First World War. But before we get into that argument, there's some important background history we need to understand. For this background information, there are four really important historical figures. Napoleon III, Emperor of the Second French Empire, Otto von Bismarck, Prime Minister of Prussia and Chancellor of the German Empire, La Marmora, Prime Minister of Italy from 1864 to 1866, and Victor Emmanuel II, King of Italy from 1861 to 1878. In January of 1859, Sardinia and France signed a treaty together. This stated that if Sardinia found itself in a defensive war against Austria, then France would come to her aid. War began on April 26, 1859, after Sardinia provoked Austria-Hungary into declaring war on them. The war would end up lasting 2.5 months with a French and Sardinian victory. However, although this war was relatively short, Napoleon III was becoming increasingly criticized about the war effort back home. This criticism is what drove Napoleon III to meet with Franz Joseph I on July 11th to sign an armistice without the presence of the Sardinians. This armistice absolutely outraged the Sardinians, as it saw that only half of Lombardy Venetia would be awarded to Sardinia, and as well as this, the rulers of central Italy would be restored to their thrones. Despite the terms of this armistice, Sardinia would go on to occupy and then annex the central Italian kingdoms and duchies. Lastly, France annexed Savoy and Nice as direct compensation for their involvement in the war. However, this outraged Italian nationalists because they saw this as a direct loss of rightfully Italian lands, thus sowing the first thread of distrust between France and Italy. The mid-1860s was a time where Italy pursued closer ties with Prussia and distanced itself from France through the Italo-Prussian Alliance of 1866 and the Third War of Italian Independence. However, it was not a guarantee that Italy and Prussia would form a stronger bond. At first, La Marmora was distrusting of Bismarck and did not want to displease Napoleon III, as he still saw him as his faithful ally from the Second War of Italian Independence. Initially, both Napoleon III and La Marmora hoped for a peaceful transfer of Venetia to Italy, and there would be no bloodshed. Despite the mutual feelings between France and Italy on this subject, Otto von Bismarck was able to persuade La Marmora, both directly and through his ambassador to Berlin, that Italy would need to take Venetia through force, and the only way to do that would be to sign an alliance with Prussia. On April 8, 1866, La Marmora telegrammed the Italian ambassador to Berlin, Ganove, to sign the Italo-Prussian alliance with Otto von Bismarck. Despite the 3 wars of independence Italy fought, they had never been able to fully annex the Papal States. This problem was further exacerbated by the French garrison in Rome protecting the Pope. Despite Napoleon III supporting a unified Italy, he did not support the Kingdom of Italy controlling Rome in order to maintain Catholic opinion back in France. However, the Rome garrison was called back to France in the summer of 1870 due to the Prussian invasion. France needed the extra manpower and feared this garrison would give Italy a reason to join the war on the side of Prussia like they did in 1866. With the capture of Napoleon III at the Battle of Sedan on September 2nd, Italy had no more obstacles stopping it from invading Rome. Victor Emmanuel II gave the green light for an ultimatum to be sent to the Pope. Upon the rejection of this ultimatum, Italy invaded what was left of the Papal States on September 20th, 1870. By the 1880s, France was ready to incorporate Tunisia into the French colonial empire. However, they feared opposition from Britain, Germany, and Italy. Fortunately for France, by the end of 1880, Britain and Germany offered no resistance over French control of Tunisia. Italy did not follow suit, as they saw Tunisia as part of Italy's sphere of influence. Back in the 1860s, Italy had secured both economic and political treaties with Tunis. They even claimed Napoleon III sanctioned Italian control over Tunisia. However, with his capture and fall of the Second French Empire, both England and pro-French factions in France opposed this. France officially invaded Tunisia after a Tunisian tribe conducted raids into Algeria in March of 1881. Italy was outraged by this invasion, which ended up sparking riots between French and Italians in Marseille, Rome, Turin, Naples, Genova, and Palermo. The French ambassador to Rome even reported receiving multiple threats against his life. In May of 1882, Italy would sign the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. This was a direct product of the falling out between France and Italy for the past 23 years, with the final straw being aggressive French ambition in North Africa. In this section, I'll be presenting the actions taken by all three members of the Triple Alliance from 1882 to 1914 that justify Italy's decision to join the Entente. We'll start with Germany. Due to the Congress of Berlin in 1884 and the rapid decline of the Ottoman Empire, Italy had become interested in colonizing Ottoman Libya. Despite this, Germany looked to create a positive diplomatic relationship with them. Kaiser Wilhelm II had two state visits to the Ottoman Empire in 1889 and 1898. These were to build a stronger bond with the Sultan and to present Germany as a friend of Islam. As well as this, Germany began supporting the Ottomans militarily. From 1883 to 1895, Goltz was sent as a military advisor to modernize the Ottoman army. By the late 1880s, their military had become increasingly dependent on Germany. Germany would even go on to limit Italy during the Italo-Turkish War in order to maintain positive relations with the Ottomans. Italy planned on bombarding several port cities, deploying a fleet to the Red Sea, as well as sparking the Balkan nations to join the war against the Ottomans. Germany would pressure both the Italians and the Ottomans to keep the war to specifically Libya in order to prevent major economic disruption. After the war, Germany would even send another military advisor to the Ottoman Empire in 1913, only a year after the hostilities between Italy and the Ottomans had ended. Lastly, Germany invested heavily into the Ottoman economy. Projects like the Berlin-Baghdad Railroad and 42% of Ottoman foreign trade being German and Austrian held by 1909 further secured Ottoman dependency. However, by the late 1900s, the largest European power investing in Italy was France. Germany had begun to completely shift its focus on the Ottomans. Austria-Hungary was the worst of the two Germanic members of the Triple Alliance. The first major disconnect between Austria-Hungary and Italy was during the Bosnian crisis of 1908. Article 7 of the Triple Alliance states, if Austria-Hungary or Italy should find themselves under the necessity of modifying it by temporary or permanent occupation on their part, this occupation shall take place only after a previous agreement between the two powers, based upon the principle of reciprocal compensation for every advantage, territory, or other. Shortly after Austria-Hungary's reckless annexation of Bosnia, Italy pointed to Article 7, asking for Trento and Trieste as compensation for this change in the status quo. Austria-Hungary completely refused this and did not offer Italy a counter-settlement. This action violated the agreements of the Triple Alliance. Furthermore, for an unknown amount of time, Konrad von Hötzendorf, the chief of the General Staff of the Austro-Hungarian Armed Forces, called for a preemptive war with Italy. This ultimately caused a major clash with the Foreign Office in 1911. Both political actions and important military figures in Austria-Hungary pushed Italy away and even violated agreements made between the two nations. By the beginning of the 20th century, France realized how much of a threat Italy posed in the event of a war with Germany. Due to this, Paris wrote to Rome in hopes of stabilizing relations. Through these talks, France and Italy reached the Franco-Italian Agreement in 1902. This agreement states that Italy has colonial rights to Libya and political influence in Morocco if they so choose. As well as this, the status quo between Italy and France in North Africa will be upheld. Additionally, the two powers agreed that if they found themselves in a defensive war, the other would remain neutral. This agreement completely removed tension between France and Italy in North Africa, the main reason for Italy joining the Triple Alliance. Italy chose to sign with the Triple Alliance again in 1912 in order to not be completely isolated. However, the July crisis further pushed Italy to change their stance. There are three events during the July crisis that further justify Italy in joining the Entente. The first is a letter to Berlin on July 14th asking Berlin to approach Vienna in talks about reaching an accord on Balkan influence between Austria-Hungary and Italy. This letter then goes on to discuss the looming Austro-Serbian crisis, stating, also, in this case, an increase of Austrian territorial expansion, which does not bring to us corresponding adequate territorial compensation. Italy feared a second violation of Article 7 of the Triple Alliance and hoped to prevent this through negotiations with Germany and Austria-Hungary. Despite this, Article 7 was violated again when Austria-Hungary sent their ultimatum to Serbia on July 23rd. Before any possible territorial gains could be made, consultation between Italy and Austria-Hungary must take place. This did not happen. The final event was a letter sent by Italy to Berlin and Vienna on July 27th. The letter states, "The Treaty of the Triple Alliance has for its goals the maintenance of the territorial status quo, especially in the Balkan Peninsula. For this reason, if Austria modifies it even in a small way to her advantage, she violates it, and we would be released from all obligations, even moral ones, of the alliance." One day after receiving this letter, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. This was the last straw for Italy, completely breaking all trust between the two powers. Finally, the war was started by Austria-Hungary with their declaration of war on Serbia. Germany then declared war on Russia and France first. All articles of the Triple Alliance only require direct assistance or military action if the war is defensive. Italy had no obligation to enter the war based on the articles of the treaty alone. Ultimately, the actions of the two other members of the Triple Alliance and rapidly changing geopolitical scene all came together to both justify and help us understand Italy's decision to join the Entente. Hopefully, I was able to prove to you here why Italy did not betray the Central Powers. Thank you for watching.